Hi, this is Kenny Albert. You're listening to the Broadway Hat Podcast with your host, Kyle Hall, the #1 podcast for all things Rangers hockey.
Welcome back to the Broadway Hat Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hall. This week, the big news for both the NHL and the Rangers is the announcement of the new 56-game schedule, as well as a new division setup. The NHL will be broken up into 4 divisions this year, with the Rangers playing in the East Division, with Boston, Buffalo, New Jersey, the Islanders, Philly, Pittsburgh, and Washington. The Rangers will play 8 games against each of those teams, with the season opener on January 14th at the Garden against the Islanders, and training camp is set to start on January 3rd, so the season truly is now right around the corner. This week, we're joined by 14-year NHL veteran John Ogrodnick. John played in 928 NHL games, scored 402 goals, and had 827 points. He played in 5 AllStar games and was a first-team All-NHL player in the 1984-85 season after scoring 55 goals and having 105 points. We talked to John about his time playing with the Red Wings, playing with a young Steve Yzerman, getting traded to the Nordiques for a playoff run, his time in New York and playing on the bread and butter line, and also a really great story about his time over in Australia with Wayne Gretzky. Let's send it to our interview with John. And today we are joined by a very special guest, 5-time All-Star, 928 career NHL games, 402 goals, 14-year veteran, John Ogrodnick. Thanks for joining us today.
No, thank you, Kyle. It's great to be with you.
Now, you guys can't see this, but John, on his wall behind him, has all his All-Star Game jerseys hanging, some Red Wings jerseys hanging. It's quite the collection you have yourself there.
It is. You know what I always say, you don't really appreciate it too much when when you're playing the game, but after you've been out of the game for a long time and, you tend to appreciate some of your achievements that you had through your career. Obviously you had some, pretty good personal, achievements, but the ultimate obviously is winning a Stanley Cup. And, unfortunately I wasn't on a team that did that. The last time I guess was, winning a couple Memorial Cups, which was a championship of all junior hockey, but, never got by the second round when it came to playoffs, whether with the Rangers or the Quebec Nordiques.
Talk about your junior hockey. So you started off in New Westminster for the WHL.
Yes, New Westminster Bruins, suburb of Vancouver, Canada. You had the OHL, which is Ontario, Quebec Major, which is Quebec. But in the Western Hockey League, you had to cross over 4 provinces, and plus had to go down to Portland and Seattle and play games down there. So the travel was crazy. But, the New Westminster Bruins was a team that actually went to the Memorial Cup 4 years in a row. Ernie Punch McLean was the coach. And back in the late 70s, it was, Kyle, you probably know this, it was all pretty much intimidation. So Ernie always had the biggest, toughest team. So they kind of choked the Memorial Cup the first 2 years. They were very good. And then I got called up in 77, and we finally won it in 77. Nothing to do with me. I was just very honored to be on that team. We won it in 77. And then in 78, we won it again. And, we just barely made the playoffs, but the organization was just used to winning. And somehow we didn't have quite the team we had the year before, but we ended up beating the Peterborough Petes that year in the finals. And the year before was the Ottawa 67s with Bobby Smith and Steve Payne and Doug Wilson, those guys. So exciting times, and then from there, obviously I was drafted by Detroit in the 79 draft.
Yes, you were taking 66 overall. Now, were you expecting to go higher in the draft, or was that pretty much where you were slotted to stay?
No, I'm glad you asked that question, because I always tell this, people always want to hear stories, when you're out there having a couple, as Mickey Redmond would say, a couple Coca-Colas, people want to hear stories. And I had a pretty good year as an 18-year-old, but back then 18-year-olds couldn't get drafted. And then when I was 19 in my draft year, they actually just started the underage. But, as an 18-year-old, I ended up, I believe, with around 59 goals. And the next year, which was my draft year, I wasn't playing quite as much. And I'm like, well, gosh, what the heck's going on? So my coach, Ernie McLean, called me into his office, and he said, John, he says, don't worry. He says, you're going to go in the first or second round here. He says, I got 9 other 19-year-olds I got to get drafted. And I guess back then, I don't know if it still works that way, but the more kids that get drafted, the more money the junior team makes. And, so I wasn't getting quite the ice time and stuff like that. And meanwhile, Brian Propp and Ray Allison and, Derlago was a year before me. But, these guys are racking up 150 points, and they all go in the first round. And, I'm listening to their draft, and the first round doesn't go, I don't get picked. Second round, I don't get picked. Third round, I don't get picked. And then finally the fourth round, as you know, 66th overall, I end up getting picked by the Detroit Red Wings. As it turns out, Ernie McLean was a part-time scout for the Red Wings. And there's actually still a few guys that played in New West that retired in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which for the longest time was the farm team for the Detroit Red Wings. So actually one of the gentlemen, Neil Meadmore, that I actually roomed with in New West, actually we still keep in touch. He comes to Detroit frequently, but he's out in Kalamazoo, and he had a pretty good career in the the International Hockey League there. So I got drafted by Detroit, and I said, there's no way I'm going to end up in Kalamazoo. No insult to the other guys, but I just worked my butt off in training camp. And ironically, that year, they just moved the farm team to the Adirondacks in upstate New York and in Glens Falls. Anyways, I spent about 3 months in the minors, and then George Lyle blew his knee out. He was on the left wing with Dale McCord and Mike Foligno, and Bobby Crom was the coach at the time and called me up, and Ned Harkness, who was running, the Adirondack team, who was infamous back in the 70s, he was kind of running the Red Wing organization and was forcing players to get haircuts and all that. He kind of took the college route towards professionals back then. It didn't quite work out. So the nickname was Harkness from the Darkness. But Ned actually came up to me and said, John, you're going up for the weekend. And I just said to myself, you know what, I'm not coming back. You know what? And so, like I tell kids nowadays, you get that opportunity, man. You got to make the most of it. You got to do what you can do.
Yeah, you definitely did. You came up and you played the rest of the year with the Red Wings with the big club. You actually put up 32 points in your first season in only 40 games. So you really you came in the NHL and you really produced well right away. And then after that, you, like you said, you stuck around in your first full year with the Red Wings. You made the AllStar team your first full season. So what was that like?
21 at the time, yeah. You know what? It was, the whole thing, Kyle, is whether you can acclimate yourself to the next level. It's like an onion peeling. You play with some pretty good kids in, midget hockey, and, then you go to tier 2 hockey, and, not all the kids can make it to that level. And then you go from tier 2 to major junior, and again, there, certain kids can't make it. So it's a question of whether you can acclimate yourself. And I didn't know if I could. I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch, major junior hockey, and believe it or not, I was like 5'5". I didn't start growing until I was like 15. I used to play defense, and they had to move me up to forward because I was so small. And I just remember going to junior games with the Edmonton Oil Kings, and man, these guys were monsters. They're 6'2", 200 pounds. I'm looking, and you're like, holy cow, will I ever be able to make it in this league? And you get the opportunity, you acclimate yourself, and boom, So, then I'm playing in New West, and I remember going to the Vancouver Coliseum, watching the NHL games, and I'm looking at these guys. I remember the Rangers were in town playing Vancouver. I remember looking at big Nick Foytu, and his hands could barely fit in his gloves, and he had wrists that were unbelievably big. I'm going, and you're a kid, and you're kind of in awe looking at these guys, and you're like, man, you know what? And, then you get the opportunity, and I would say probably when I got called up, towards the end of the season, I started feeling pretty good. And then the next season, I felt like, yeah, I can acclimate myself to this level. But that was my job, Kyle. I had to score goals. I wasn't a puck handler. My stick was always shaped like a 7-iron. I was kind of like the joke of the hockey stick in the NHL. And, it was like a wedge. And but it was there for shooting. It wasn't for tipsy doodling. And so you're right, yeah. So then you end up getting 35, and then I think the following year I might have had 40 or something like that. And I remember talking with Dale McCord at the time, and not being arrogant or cocky or anything like that. I just, he was my roommate, when he was in Detroit. And I remember talking to him saying, Dale, I think I might be able to score 50 in this league. And he kind of looked at me like, huh, and maybe it was premature. I mean, it was just a friendly conversation. There was no arrogance in there and stuff like that. It's just, you just had this feeling that you could acclimate yourself to the next level. And I should have done it the 1 year.
You did.
Well, I should have done it the year before. What happened was I had 42 with 16 games to go in the season, and I broke my wrist in Chicago. Had the puck along the boards, and I made a cross-ice pass. And Troy Murray hit me, and wasn't even a hard hit. Troy was with Chicago. Didn't even knock me over. But my arms were extended when I made the pass, and he just caught my left wrist the right way, and I looked down. I saw that it was broken, and so I basically missed the last 16 games of the season. And, and it was frustrating because I should have hit the 50 at that point. But and obviously I ended up doing it the following season.
So going back to that your rookie year, you're 21 years old, you're in the AllStar game. What is it like walking into that locker room as a 21-year-old? Did you have the respect of everyone in the locker room at the time? Or they kind of just like, okay, this 21-year-old, let's see what he can do?
Well, first of all, how I felt, I was nervous as heck. There's no question about it. And, even kids nowadays, or even 10 years ago, 12. I mean, the thing is, Kyle, you're playing with guys that you had their hockey cards. Some of these guys growing up, so you're in awe and you're nervous and you're excited. There's no question about it. As far as respect, no, everybody was there. I mean, everybody's there just to have a good time. There wasn't a lot of effort involved. You know what I'm saying? It was more of a show, not like they do now. But no, everybody. There was no. Arrogance in the room or like that. No, everybody was very friendly to everybody, and I'm sure some of the older guys that were on the team were probably could understand the nervousness of a younger player being there. But no, there was no no tier level or anything like that, and he just went out there and but it was nerve wracking. There's no question about it. It was very nervous.
So you talk about your obviously your great goal scoring through that probably one of the best goal scorers in the whole 1980 decade. You led the Red Wings 6 years in a row in scoring, and you had the one big year with your 55 goals. Did you feel the pressure every night to produce with a team that was, not as good as the 70s Red Wings?
Again, another great question, Kyle. You know what? I felt the pressure, and because that was my job to score goals. I wasn't a fighter. My job was to score, and if I wasn't scoring, I wasn't going to be in the league. And you felt pressure because you felt like you weren't contributing. And I saw myself play on videotapes and stuff like that, and I was pretty much invisible out there unless I was getting 5 to 6 shots on goal a game. Then you were noticeable because again, I'm not that center iceman that's going to dangle, and go up the ice and make stick handle and try and dangle through guys. But ironically, some of the best games I played is when somehow I could not be pressured. And I just went out there like a kid and say, John, just go out there and have fun. Go out there and have fun. And it's amazing how much more energy I would have. You breathe properly. You're not tensed up. You're more relaxed out there and you just go out there and have fun. But unfortunately, and like any sports, I mean, it's all mental. It's all mental. I mean, you look at Tiger Woods now, just an icon, and now mentally he struggles when he plays and stuff like that. And it's all sports is mental. And the worst thing, Kyle, is when you go in a slump, man. That is just the worst thing. Then you really start to fight it, and it can get ugly.
Now, another guy that played during the 80s that was pretty good, Wayne Gretzky. You played in, I think, 4 of your All-Star games with him. And also, I don't know if you were with him on any Team Canada teams as well. But what was it like sharing the ice with him and also competing against him throughout your entire career?
Gosh, I hate to see it. I don't hate to see it again. But again, another great question. Gretz was the year I was voted first team All-Star, and after I had the 55-goal year and finished with 100 and some points or whatever, I actually started the All-Star game with him on the left side, and which had him and Yuri Curry, and I was very nervous. There's no question about it. But that lasted one shift. After the first shift, boom, they put Messier up there with him, and I dropped down to the next line, which I had no problems with. But Wayner was, again, he was an icon. I mean, this guy was unbelievable. He had eyes in the back of his head, and I tell a lot of people again when you start talking about hockey stories. I mean, the guy wasn't the biggest guy, he wasn't the fastest guy, he didn't have the hardest shot. But he was just a smart hockey player with eyes in the back of his head and I use that analogy because, throughout your career and training camp and whatever, you there's a lot of kids out there that can skate, they can shoot, they can stick handle. And Kyle, as you know, it's how smart you play the game. You don't have to be the fastest skater or have the hardest shot. It's moving the puck and playing a smart, intelligent game. And that's what differentiates the minors from the majors, I believe. So playing with Gretzky was nerve-wracking, but I told him a story. My wife and I actually on a charity event went down to Australia 4 or 5 years ago, not to play. Dave Hansen, who I played with in the minors when I was there for 3 months from Slapshot, he was like the celebrity coach of the U.S. team, and I was like the celebrity coach of the Canadian team. So these are all younger kids, and we ended up playing in 6 different cities throughout Australia. So one of the when we were in Sydney, they actually flew Wayne in for a black tie event, and Dave Hansen, his wife Betty Ann, my wife, and myself, and Wayne, and he had a couple friends with him, or his son, I believe. And we had time to have a couple Cokes and a burger, at a restaurant, and we spent a few hours with him. And this is the first time I really was able to sit down and talk. And just a super nice guy. And I told him a story. This is going back to your question with the AllStar Game. I said, Wayne, you probably don't remember this, but for me it meant a lot. But I believe we were in New Jersey, and we had our morning skate for this All-Star Game, and then we're all going, slowly everybody's getting on the bus to get back to the hotel, and I'm outside signing autographs for kids and whatever. All of a sudden, Gretz walks by and just grabs the marker out of my hand and starts scribbling a bunch of autographs, and he jumps on the bus. I go, well, that was interesting. But it was funny because when we got on the bus and we started moving, he actually came over and he said, John, he said, he actually apologized. And he said, I apologize for doing that. He said, he would have been stuck there for hours signing autographs is basically what happened. So I told him that story. Obviously, he's not going to remember that, but to me, it was a hell of a story. I mean, just a class guy for doing something like that. And I told him that meant a lot to me. You know what? And but super nice guy, and it was a great time. We spent about 3-4 hours with him. He wanted to rent a boat and go in the ocean and and just do the harbor around there in Sydney, but the weather was too adverse to be able to do something like that. So.
Another guy you play with halfway through your Red Wings career was Steve Yzerman. When he came up, he had a great. I think he was a runner-up in the Calder that year. Did you see right away how good he was? Could you see right away that he was going to be an unbelievable?
I mean, he was good. Don't get me wrong. You know what? The way he matured into a hockey player is unbelievable. So, Kyle, he was good. Don't get me wrong, okay? And he was 18 when he came up, and he was a young kid, and it's quite the adjustment for him. And and he knows this probably also. When he first came in, he still tried to do some of his junior stuff that you just couldn't get away with in the NHL. He tried to stick handle and try and beat everybody by himself, and I don't mean that in a selfish manner. That's just the way his game was, and he got away with stuff like that in junior. But in the show, it took him a little time to, again, acclimate himself to the NHL, and his game at a rapid pace became much smarter, if you want to say that. So he was good, and he, when I left, he was very good, and then he just, I keep using the word icon, but eventually he just really matured, and a star player in the NHL. There's no question about it. Very quiet in the dressing room. I always liked Stevie. He was kind of, humble and quiet, didn't say much. And when they made him captain, he led on by example on the ice and not so much verbally in the dressing room. And it was frustrating for him also. You know what? He came from Peterborough, I believe, and he came to Detroit, and he, like anybody else, you're kind of happy to be in the NHL at the beginning of your career, but eventually the losing just wears on you, and it's not, and it's not enjoyable. The hockey's not enjoyable, and not making the playoffs is not enjoyable. So, we all went through a dry spell there for a few years. My situation didn't change until I got traded to Quebec, but Stevie waited a long time before they became competitive, and, and he hung in there, but he's, he just got better and better. So, let's just say when he came in the league, he was like at an 8, and then after a few years in the league, he became a 10. Extraordinary hockey player. He's well loved here in the city of Detroit, and I still communicate with him, and he's got his work cut out for him. We kind of joke, He's like the general manager of the general managers of the 80s when we had to rebuild the Red Wings. He's in that situation now. So, hey, let's see what he does. You know what? He did a great job recruiting, players in Tampa Bay. There's no question about it. And like anything else, Kyle, it all starts from the top. And, Stevie's smart enough to realize he's also got to surround himself with good people. So he's got a great scouting staff. And like any business, it starts from the top and you build it all the way down. And he's good at that. He's got great scouts. But he even said, John, you know what? Hey, you know what? You're drafting these kids at 18 now. You just don't know who's going to pan out and who's not going to pan out. I mean, there's guys that went in the first round when I played. I remember a guy by the name of Perry Turnbow, big, strong left winger, played for the Portland Winterhawks. I mean, the guy, I think he had 72 goals or 70-some goals in junior hockey. And it was tough and went in the first round. And I mean, he played in the NHL. I think he had 130-goal year. I could be wrong. And but he was never that stud, for a first-round draft pick. And he kind of bounced around, to a few teams. And, I talked to some people who played with him in St. Louis. And, as it turns out, like we talked earlier, no insult when I say this, but remember how I told you it's how smart you play the game and, being smart defensively, moving the puck and playing the game. In junior hockey, he could kind of bull his way through, with his intimidation. And I always joke about this because Perry always had the squirrely eyes when he get in a fight and kind of intimidate kids when they were younger. But, you get in the NHL and they're like, hey, I'll straighten those eyes out. There's no intimidation there. So, but like Stevie, you know what? Yeah, great hockey player. I thought he did a fantastic job in Tampa with that organization. And I tell you what, the fans here in Detroit, I'm living here in Farmington Hills, Michigan now, and you know what? They're dying. They're hoping that Stevie's the guy that can turn it around, and I think he's hoping to have his goal was to have something competitive here. I believe in about 2 to 3 years, but of course, Kyle, this virus has kind of screwed everything up, and who knows when this season's going to start, and so it's quite the task. There's no question about it for Steve.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you alluded to your Quebec career as well. Was that a surprise when you got dealt to Quebec, or was that something that?
No, I didn't know it was going to happen.
You knew it was going to happen.
Excuse me. The rumor was at that time, I heard it from some pretty good sources, and they could be wrong. I don't know. The rumor was it was a 6-player deal that was already done, and the main player, I was told, and it was supposed to be, Peter Klima. So what was going to happen was. Stevie and I were not quite conducive on the same line, only because Stevie was more of a goal-scoring center iceman. So they ended up putting Gerard Gallant with Stevie, and they had Klima with Adam Oates. And as you know, Adam Oates is a premier playmaker, asked Brett Hall. So Oatesy and I got along. We were friends and stuff like that. So I think the whole idea was that I was going to move in with Adam. We had played together for a little bit, and then they put Peter with him. And then the player out of Quebec, the main player, I think, was Brent Ashton, was a great checker and could get you 20, maybe 25, maybe 30 goals. I don't know. I can't remember. But you put him on the checking line with Sean Burr, and we would have 3 fantastic lines. But it's kind of a funny story. It's not funny. It's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time. But we had our morning skate that day, and we were playing Quebec that night. So, Donnie Murdoch, right, from the Rangers? Yes, and he was scouted for Phyllis Zito with the Rangers, and he was in town, and we're just standing outside the dressing room of the Red Wing dressing room. We're just talking about the old days, because Donnie finished his career off in Detroit. So we're kind of BSing there for a while and whatever, and all of a sudden, Jacques Demers, our coach, and Michel Bergeron, the Quebec coach, come out, and they walk by, and Michel Bergeron just stares at me. And no disrespect, but the French do like to stare a lot, and he's kind of staring at me as they walk by, and I go to Donnie Murdoch. I said, Doc, what's he staring at? And I remember Doc going, I don't know, whatever. And so Doc and I are still talking, and, Doc says, Phil's been trying to get you in New York, but Jimmy Devellino says you're untouchable. He's not going to trade you, all this stuff. And whether that was true or not, I'm just telling you what Donnie told me. And, all of a sudden they come out of the visitors' dress and they walk by, and Michel Bergeron just sits there and stares at me. And, I'm like, yes, this is crazy. It's kind of weird. And I should have went home and, had my pregame meal and just got out of there. But And again, whether this is accurate or not, I don't know. And this is the rumors that I had heard. But the last minute, they changed the deal. Bergeron wanted 2 50-goal scorers. So I was told he wouldn't do the deal unless he got Ogrodnick instead of Klima. Again, Kyle, I can't say that's factual, but from the sources that I talked to, that's what I was told. So I don't want anybody to take this for heart. So we played Quebec that night. Jimmy calls me into the manager's equipment room and says, "John, we just traded you to Quebec," and I had to change dress rooms that night. So that's how it all happened.
So you played in Quebec for just a handful of games, and then you made the playoff run with them. What was it like playing in that city? Did you enjoy it up there? Did you not? I know there's some split reviews from some players that played up there before.
Well, it was a highlight of one of the highlights of my career. Okay, because in Detroit we didn't really, make the playoffs, maybe once or twice, maybe. I know we played St. Louis the one year, but the hockey was exciting. It was fun. Okay, because we had a very good team. You had Michel Goulet, 50-goal scorer with Dale Hunter. You had the Stastny brothers at the time were some of the top European players. Then you had myself with Jason Lafreniere and Lane Lambert. So you had 2 50-goal scorers, and you had the Stastny brothers. So I struggled a little bit when I got there. I was a little, trying to find a place to live and rent, and, it was just kind of hectic, whatever. But I was able to get it together in the playoffs, and it was just exhilarating, Kyle. I mean, you know what? We beat Hartford in the first round. I think it was only a 5-game series, and then we ended up taking Montreal to 7 games, and we lost to Montreal in the 7th game. But to play in the infamous Battle of Quebec, it was exciting. There's no question about it. It was exciting, and great city to play hockey in and stuff like that. The negatives were they didn't really want to speak English. The negatives were, your career is short. The tax bracket's almost 60% when you include provincial. I think it's at that time 59 or 59.5%. And then probably the biggest situation, Kyle, was I was always nervous or concerned about life after hockey. And as you know, back then we didn't make the $1 million salaries, and I was always nervous about that. And I just felt that while I was playing, I had to really go out there and meet people and try and prepare myself for life after hockey. And I knew I wasn't going to retire up there. And so there was multiple concerns. So, I had asked to get traded. They actually said, "John, have a good playoff, and then we'll do our best to get, to move you in the summertime." And it wasn't so much that. It was just the excitement of the playoffs, and the excitement of that, like I said, going 7 games against the Montreal Canadiens. It was just exhilarating. And that year in the playoffs, both Michel Goulet and I both had 9 goals in 13 games. And that was extraordinary, Kyle. I really, really enjoyed the playoffs there.
And then from there, you moved over to the Rangers. Like you alluded to before, the Rangers were always interested in you, even when you were in Detroit. So what was that transition like going from the small, a smaller, I guess, franchise like Quebec over to New York?
Well, what happened was my agent called me. He said, "Listen, John, you got an option here." He said, "The Pittsburgh Penguins are interested and New York Rangers are interested. Where would you like to go?" You know what? And I was always enamored with New York City. And even later on in the years, I think Wayne Gretzky said that every player's got to have the chance of playing New York. I mean, that was years later he made that comment. But, my wife and I chose New York. So they ended up making the trade to New York. And the negative thing was, and I feel bad because what happened, Kyle, was I just lost all my confidence when I went to New York, and I didn't play well under Phil Esposito. I thought my career was done. I mean, you talk about a slump, I couldn't do anything. And, what happens with my career, and every player is different. I always needed training camp and maybe a week or so into the season before everything came together, especially as a goal scorer. I mean, I remember going to training camp, going down the wing, letting a slap shot go, falling on my face and, going 10 feet wide. And so it wasn't quite, I was skinny. I was always in shape, but the whole timing aspect, just feeling for the game, when to jump in the holes, all that stuff, I just needed that time. And when I came to New York, first of all, Quebec promised to trade me, and in the offseason they didn't. So I ended up not showing up to training camp, and then I ended up showing up for the last week, and then I got traded to Quebec or to New York, and I just wasn't ready. And Phil was a great guy. Phil Esposito was a great guy, and like I said, I feel bad I didn't play better for him. And Eddie Jackman, I believe, was the assistant coach, and I just struggled. I just never got my confidence. I didn't have that time I just explained to you to get my confidence going. And then the next season it continued. And I just remember Phil was upset at me because I wasn't having a very good training camp, but I'm notorious for not having good training camps, and it just pressure or whatever, and I just never got my confidence. And so the 2 years I was there, I was not happy with my performance. And again, I felt bad because, again, I like Phil Esposito, I like Eddie Jackman, they're great guys. I just couldn't. I struggled. So then the following season, Roger Nielsen takes over, and Roger said, John, he says his philosophy was he always gives somebody 10 games. So finally it worked out because in training camp they put a line together of myself, Kelly Kissio, and Brian Mullen. And one thing, Kyle, for me to be successful, I have to be on a line that we all click and work well together, because I'm not going to do it individually. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and we just clicked. We clicked. We had a very good line, as you know, with Kissio, Mullen, and myself. So we had training camp and 10 games, and that's all I needed. And all of a sudden, boom, I got my confidence, and boom, ended up having a 40-goal year. And it had a lot to do with Roger Nielsen and just being a little patient and giving, you know what I'm saying, to get the confidence going. And, that's what makes a good coach or a good, they got to, every player is different. Some guys can come out of the chute and get going, and other guys, you just, like I said, I'm sure with the Red Wings, a lot of people were like, oh my God, you're in training camp a lot of those years. I just looked awful, and they're like, oh my God, but I guess they knew once the season started and everything started happening, it'll all start to click in.
Yeah, so for the New York, your new season, you have 74 points, 43, which is really one of the best seasons almost in Ranger single season history for points wise. Now, with Kelly Kiss, familiarity with him from Detroit, is that why he clicked right away, or is that just something that developed in that training camp?
No, just developed in that training camp. Kelly was actually in Detroit for a little bit, but I don't think we played that much together or whatever. With Kissio and Brian Mullen, Kissio was a right-handed center iceman. The important thing, Kyle, with the three of us, nobody tried to do anything individual. Nobody tried to beat somebody one-on-one. Nobody tried to do that. We all just moved the puck quickly, and we did a great job cycling down low. And we never really held on to the puck, for a long period of time. And we just gelled. It was just tic-tac-toe, boom, 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 and moving the puck, and it was great. And, that was probably part of the reason why I struggled the years before also, because I really I didn't have that connection on a line. And, as far as working well. And that's what you need. I mean, again, that's where coaching comes in, and they've got to try and find the right chemistry on a line. Who's working well with whom, and I remember when they traded for Bernie Nichols, who I see up here when I play some charity games in Ontario. I run into Bernie. Hasn't changed at all, man. He still looks like he's 30 years old, and he still skates, and he does a great job out there. And, but Roger, this one didn't quite work out. He gave it 10 games, and he thought he'd put his best left winger and right winger with Bernie, and that would work. It was myself, Bernie, and Darren Turcotte, and it was god-awful. It was the worst line. And we had to stick with it for 10 games. I'm like, oh my gosh, put me back with Kissio and Mullen. Hurry, please, put me back. I was like, because the chemistry just wasn't there. It wasn't like one person's, what I'm saying. It's just all chemistry and who works well with who. And the crazy thing about it was, I don't even remember, it might have been 91 or the infamous trade where they traded Kevin Miller to Detroit. And I don't know if we even won a game after that trade. And we ended up getting beat out in the first round of the playoffs. So this is the biggest frustrating part of the career when I was in New York, because that season, Kelly Kissio, I can't remember. I think he bruised his ribs or had rib issues. So they called up Kevin Miller, and we just clicked. Okay. I mean, Kevin, smart hockey player, moved the puck, right-handed center iceman, scoring a bunch of goals. And again, Kyle, it's my job to score goals. There's, if I'm not scoring goals, then I'm not going to be in the league. Okay. But we had one of the hottest lines in the league, and we're just on fire. And, then Kelly ends up coming back. He's not 100%, and it's not Kelly's fault. He's not 100%. So he's struggling out there. Our line's struggling out there, and the team's not doing very, very well. The team was doing well when we had two offensive lines going in. So when Bernie's line was going and our line was going, obviously we had great defense with Leech and James Patrick and, very good goaltending, I believe, with Richter and Van Beesbrook. We had a good team. I mean, it's, I don't know if we're on the close to winning the President's Trophy or not. I just can't remember way back when. But anyway, so Kelly's struggling. We're not winning. And, and our line's struggling. And then Kelly ends up re-injuring himself, and they put Kevin back with us again. And again, our line's on fire again, and scoring a bunch of goals and teams winning and, everything's going well. And for the life of me, and Kyle, in sports, you never mess with something that's going well. Kelly Kissio even told me that he went to Roger Nielsen and told Roger, leave those guys alone. They're playing unbelievable. And I guess Roger mentioned something to him, well, you're our team captain, I owe it to you, this, that, and whatever. And no disrespect to Kelly, but unfortunately, Kelly still wasn't 100%, okay, and he was hurting. And for the life of me, when Neil Smith traded Kevin Miller, and then Kelly went back on our line, and Kelly wasn't 100%, we started struggling. I don't even know if we won a game after the trading deadline. I believe we got beat out in the first round of playoffs. And, on a team level, as a fan, I mean, that was just very, very, very frustrating. And I know they really berated Neil in the papers and stuff like that. He almost lost his job over that. And it was just a bad movie, and on a personal level, I probably would have finished up with another 40, 45 goals that season because we were going that well. And, and it just fell apart. And then the following off season, they let Kissio and Mullen go to San Jose in the expansion draft. And that was pretty much the downfall with me in New York because San Jose tried to trade for me to reunite our line. But Neil Smith wanted a lot for me, and he wasn't going to make a boo-boo like he did, obviously, with Kevin Miller. So he was very, you know what I'm saying, probably intimidated to make a trade, but he wouldn't let me go to San Jose. And then when I came, that season back to New York, I basically didn't have a line. I was playing third line with Doug Waite, and we were lucky if we got two shifts a period, and it kind of just went downhill from there.
You talked before about the backline of Brian Leech. Now, you saw when he came up as a rookie, what did you see in him? It's kind of some of the Yzerman question. Did you see the greatness in him right away, or is that something he also developed around his career?
No, I think I saw more of the greatness out of Leech. Two different areas. Again, our situations here. Stevie was a highly skilled hockey player. Okay. It just took him a little time to adapt himself to the NHL style at 18, and I don't even know, gosh, you got me on this one. I don't know how old Leachy was when he came to the Rangers, but Leachy, I was very impressed from the beginning because his confidence back there and the moves he could do and controlling the puck and moving the puck as a rookie was unbelievable. So with Leachy, I saw it a lot quicker. This guy had the composure, back there as a rookie that I was very, very impressed with. And he moved the puck so well, moved the puck very well.
And then your last year there, they bring in Mark Messier. So what was it like having him in the locker room?
It was interesting. I mean, Mark is a highly skilled hockey player. There's no question about it. He's big, he's strong, he can skate. And, I think we're all excited, when they announced that we're going to have Mark Messier and, with the Rangers and, just because of what it is, what he's, we all played against him and, big, strong, hard skating player, that's, a great asset on a hockey club. There's no question about it.
Now, when you left the Rangers and you look back, did you see that team was going to go on a run that they did with, how dominant, they won the cup 2 years later, and then, they're every year in the 90s, they're pretty competitive. Did you see that when you left, that, okay, this team is turning the corner?
You know what, Kyle, honestly, I thought that, yes, I could. You know what? You got to understand something here, Kyle. Even, when I was there and like I just told you about Nichols line and our line and stuff like that, you know what? It's just a little, mishap here or mishap there where we didn't get by the second round, but we were pretty damn close even when we were there. You know what? There might have been one or two people. I don't know. You know what? I'm just telling you, when it comes to the playoffs, it's just one bad goal, one bad pinch by a defenseman, one mistake by any player out there, and the momentum can change. Okay? And I always say you're only strong as your weakest link out there. A bounce here, something there, you know what? We were close. So I don't think it was that much of a dramatic change. I think what happened was when they won the cup, they brought in some more experienced players, and maybe that was it. Because when he brought in those older players or experienced players, they're more apt not to make a little mistake here, a little mistake there. You know what I'm saying? They're much more of a mature team, and that might have been the missing link. You know what I'm saying? Maybe just with some more 30-year-old players. McTavish and Larmer and some of these guys, or whoever were on the team back then. That might have been the difference.
Now talk about the 91-92 teams. You guys lost in the second round after winning the division. And then in the playoffs, they had a rotation of goalies with Richter and Wiesbrook. Did you think they should have stuck with Richter the entire time because he had the hot hand in the postseason? Or, they spent time throughout the entire regular season, that's just how it was?
Unfortunately, Kyle, I can't answer that question. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know how goaltenders feel. I know the whole saying is that when you go in the playoffs, you stick with the one goaltender no matter what. I just can't answer that question. I don't know. They're both very, very good goaltenders, and for the longest time, Van Beesbroek could have been the mayor of New York City. Well, I don't know if he wants that job now, but but he was an unbelievable goaltender and well loved in New York, and so they're both good goaltenders. I don't want to pretend like I can comment on that. I just thought they were both great goaltenders. Mentally, how that affects a goaltender, you'd have to ask them. So.
And looking back, do you have any good funny stories looking back in your New York career?
We just loved it. I mean, it's Betty Ann and I. We lived in North Stamford, Connecticut. Met some great people. I did want to try. I was hoping to play a little longer in New York. Like I said, once they traded Kissu and Mullen, it was just to add on to that. And I'll answer your question. Then the next year, like I said, I'm with Doug Waite, and then all of a sudden I'm up in the press box, and it's like Van Beesbroek said, how does somebody score 73 goals in 2 seasons or 72 goals or whatever ends up in the press box? But you know what? Neil just wouldn't trade me. You know what? So come the trading deadline that year, I hardly played. Brian Propp with Minnesota blew his shoulder out, so Minnesota needed a left winger. And I was 32, and I didn't play much that season. So Neil told me that they offered a 4th-round draft pick for me, and Neil said, I just couldn't let you go. And he said, basically, if you end up scoring 30 in Minnesota, I could lose my job. So that was the end of my career. I finished off in the press box that season. I scratched and clawed to come back to Detroit, but had a good training camp. But I just didn't fit in their plans here. I was kind of like in New York, that extra player that you could throw in there in case somebody got injured. And, and that was kind of the end of it. As far as New York, I mean, just a good bunch of guys. I mean, James Patrick, Brian Leech, Richter, and Van Beesbroek. I mean, just a bunch of good. Bernie Nichols, if I can remember them all. Obviously, Kissio, we still keep in touch with Kelly. He's out in Alberta, but I think he's working the Las Vegas Knights now, and haven't talked to Brian Mullen in a long time. But he's just a good nucleus, and it was just fun, Kyle, because you had good teams, and it's just, I know we didn't win a Stanley Cup, but it was fun to play on good teams. It was fun, man. I mean, New York's fun, got a chance to meet a lot of, celebrities when we were in New York, and, Susan Sarandon and Tim Robbins, just to name a couple. And, just a fun city, exciting city, had a lot of fun, and hockey was fun. And, people ask me, what was your favorite team? And, obviously, they're both original sixes, Detroit and New York. But obviously it comes down to winning, what I'm saying, versus losing a lot. And, there's no insult when I was with the Red Wings. There's no insult when I say this, but it was New York. I mean, because, you were winning, you had very good teams in New York, and it was just exciting playing Madison Square Gardens, and just the city itself was just, extraordinary. It was just fun. So I don't think there's one exact story. Probably the highlight was I was very pleased that I was able to turn it around after, 2 not so good seasons under Phil Esposito. So that was probably the highlight. And it was fun, getting your confidence back, and the game was fun again. So
you did wrap up your career back in Detroit. Was that something you always wanted to get back to Detroit to end your career, or that something that just kind of fell into place?
I actually scratched and clawed. I did a lot of it myself. I remember I actually talked to Craig Patrick in Pittsburgh, and I was talking with the Red Wings, and just trying to get that opportunity to get to training camp, and I just felt strongly that I wasn't done. And as it turned out, Detroit stepped in and decided to bring me back. And like I said, it was a little frustrating, but I understand, business is business, and that's their game plan. I had a good training camp. I think I was like third in the team in scoring, but all of a sudden, opening night, I'm not dressed. I remember sitting in the press box, and I was talking with a guy by the name of Randy Ladouceur, who was a defenseman with the Red Wings in the 80s, and he was now assistant coach with the Hartford Whalers. And he said, John, and he's looking at the stats. He goes, why aren't you dressed? And I said, I don't know. I thought maybe they're just going with the younger players, whatever. But it kind of went on and on and on, and I just wasn't dressing. I'm like, holy crap, it's like, okay, fine. You just got to work hard and do whatever. And when I did dress, I was lucky if I got one shift a period. And, then the ironic part is finally they said, go down to minors, play a few games. And they actually had brought the farm team back to Adirondack. So I was back in Adirondack where I started my career. So I went down to the minors, played a few games. They called me back up. I played in like 7 games. I had like 5 goals and 2 assists in the 7 games, but I just wasn't part of their plan, and that was it. And then in the summertime, my agent called me and said, listen, the Canadian Olympic team wants you to come out. I said, I don't think I can do it. I said, I've been in the press box here for the last 2.5 seasons. I said, I just don't know if I can do it or not. I said, mentally, I'm just, then he knew, it's like I said, it's mental. And I said, no, I just can't do it. And you look back, was it a mistake? I don't know. But, again, this game is so mental. There's no question about it. So
when you got back to Detroit, was there a different culture when you got back there from originally, when you were first there? Did you see the shift also there with, when they went on their run in the 90s as well? Like, was Yzerman a different leader then, or, Nick Lidstrom was on the team then? Did you see a different, outlook for the team?
When I came back, there was definitely a lot more depth on the team. There was definitely more talent. There's no question about it, but they were still missing something. There was a little bit of a unity that wasn't quite there that I experienced in Quebec and that I experienced with the Rangers as a team as whole. In the end, as far as, unity, I'll just leave it at that. And that's why I applaud a guy like Scotty Bowman. I only played under Scotty in AllStar games, and, there's no coaching there, obviously. So I never, and I talked to him when he's back in town a couple times. But Scotty had the knack of getting all these egos and personalities going in the right direction. And he didn't put up with any bull. Okay. The other thing Scotty does is when he takes over an organization, from what I understand, from what I witnessed anyways, is he kind of, I don't want to say cleans house, and it's not like the players that he's getting rid of are bad players. He just wants to get rid of, I believe, that negative attitude in the dressing room that's been there for such a long time. And, and I didn't even believe it, but Igor Larionov took the alumni to Russia back in 2005 or something like that. And I remember having a Coke with Dave Lewis, who's with us, and Dave was the assistant coach in Detroit, and I always thought it was just hearsay or just storytelling about, Yzerman getting traded to Ottawa. And Dave Lewis told me, hey, you know what? It was almost a done deal, and then the last minute, Mr. Illich stepped in and stopped the deal. And again, I'm just going what Louis told me, so take it for what it's worth. But he sounded very sincere. He was the assistant coach there, I believe, at the time. And but that's what Scotty wanted to do, and he just wanted to get rid of. He just wanted to clean house. So there's a few players he got rid of, and again, nothing negative about the players. What I'm saying, it's just the atmosphere. I believe he wanted to change, and but he even got Fedorov, who's, as you know, a very talented hockey player. He just got everybody going in the right direction, and that's, I believe, one of the things that makes a great coach is getting all those egos, all those personalities, and everybody, on the same page. And he did a fantastic job, and I think that's what they were missing when I first got back to Detroit.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. Really enjoyed our talk, and best of luck and everything going on.
Well, thanks, Kyle. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed this. Good luck to you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, bud.
Thank you again to John Ogrodnick for joining us this week on the show. It was great to sit down and talk to him about his illustrious career and such great stories from his playing days. He's already told me that we have more stories to talk about, and will hopefully come back on the show soon. And that does it for episode 3 of the Broadway Hat Podcast. Please hit the follow button on Spotify and follow the Broadway Hat Podcast Instagram account to be notified when new episodes come out. Thanks for listening.